British campaigning for the general election restarts again tomorrow as a result of what happened in Manchester. When you listen to the campaign rhetoric, particularly that from Theresa May and her team, do you get a sense that rhetoric will make life harder, will make the discussions when they start on Brexit more difficult? And are you looking through it or are you listening to it?
Well, of course, we are listening to what it is said. So far, I don't see anything that does make it harder from our point of view. But what I find important is that we have on both sides still room for maneuver to compromise. And the more or the harder the rhetoric is in a campaign, the less room might be there for compromises in the end. For example, I always wonder a bit about this exit fee. How these obligations that we have made together as the European Union of 28 member states have made, and the question is how much Britain will have to pay for it when it leaves. Right. I wouldn't call it an exit fee, because it gives a wrong impression. Actually, it's not a fee; it's obligations we made together, and we should fulfil these.
Mr. Barnier is the point person now for the EU from the Commission. Who do you listen to in London? We have a whole series of ministers that are addressing the issue of Brexit. Boris Johnson, David Davis. Then we have the Prime Minister as well addressing the issue as well. And there are differences in the language that each of them uses, and the objectives are different. Do you get a sense, do you have a clear understanding of who you're talking to, I guess, is my question?
Well, actually, the negotiations haven't started yet. They will start after the election here in the UK, and I'm quite sure then there will be someone nominated in the new cabinet who is in charge.
Do you have any idea who that might be?
Well, that's not my job to do that.
Do you have any preference for who that would be?
That's a new Prime Minister's job to decide that. But what is important, of course, for every negotiation is that there are two persons in charge, one on both sides, Mr. Barnier, and on the other side a British one, actually that can make deals and compromise on something. For that, they both need mandates. We now have a mandate of the European Union, the Commission, and Mr. Barnier have a mandate, and I think there will be something similar on the British side too.
But at this point, you're listening to everybody. You're listening to Boris Johnson, you're listening to David Davis, you're listening to the Prime Minister.
We are listening to the British government as a whole, of course.
OK. I'm not entirely sure I know what that means.
Well, of course, there are some nuances everywhere, but that's the same within the German government. You have some nuances, and even within the European Union, if you listen to different people, of course, there are different approaches, I would say. But still, what is crucial is that we have a common mandate, and we finally found one on the European Union side in the past 2 weeks when it comes to the negotiations. And I think we will see the same on the British side, and that makes it easier. But I don't have any worries that won't work.
Some of those voices that we just talked about seem to give the impression that exiting will be easy, that this is a very straightforward path, that this is something that is easily manageable. Do you get a sense, and I have picked up certain parts of this from Berlin, that actually the British haven't fully appreciated the complexity of what is about to happen?
Well, it's going to be very complex. I always call it the mother of negotiations. I would say it's the most complex negotiations that have ever taken place between states that we have to unbundle actually our relation now. And there are many big and small issues. For example, when it comes to the Airbus wings that are made here in the UK and then brought to Bremen or other Airbus factories to be built in. And now within one European Union, that's no problem. But once the UK is out, they need a special stamp, a special sign actually that they are matching the European regulation, and we need to organize it. Otherwise, from one day to the other, actually we can't build in British Air wings into European Airbuses, and so that's just a small detail. And there are thousands, if not hundred thousands, of details actually that need to be dealt with.
And that's how serious a worry is that in Germany? Is that kind of give us a sense of how important that is? Germany is an industrial country. It has supply chains that stretch across the whole of Europe into the UK. Is this something you're hearing German industry talking about?
Of course. I mean, Great Britain is one of our most important trade partners, and there's much investment of German companies here in the UK, and vice versa, by the way. Britain is the second biggest car market, for example, for German cars outside or within Europe, outside of Germany, the biggest. And so, of course, it is important for us that we have a good relationship, economic-wise, cultural, politically, after the Brexit. And for that, we need to agree on something what comes after. It makes it at least much more easier to go on with an intense economic partnership.
There's a lot of talk in the mile around us here, in the square mile in the City of London, about who will be going to Frankfurt, or will they be going to Paris, or whatever. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this ultimately unfolds. Do you get the impression when you talk within the ministry, when you talk within your sort of peer group around Europe, that there is a desire to create a second financial hub in Europe, one that is purely domiciled within the EU, to replicate or to compete with London?
With all due respect, I would say we have a second financial hub, that's Frankfurt, already within the European Union, with the ECB there, with many big banks and financial institutions there. And of course, we would love, as a German government, if those who decide to leave, at least with some entities, London, to go to Central or to continental Europe, to be within the Eurozone and the European Union, that they go to Frankfurt. Of course, we would love to see that, but we have as well an understanding that London will remain a very important financial hub for all companies all over Europe.
Dominant or important?
Well, we will see how it develops, actually. Of course, I mean, I'm a member of the German government. Of course, I would love Frankfurt to be to play an important role as a financial hub, and a more important one in the future. But I would say there's enough room for 2 or 3 hubs within Europe, and London worldwide. With a worldwide view, London will, of course, remain a very important financial hub.
Banking brings risks, though. Banking brings balance sheet exposure. The financial crisis has taught many people around Europe that finance is not something necessarily they want on their doorstep.
Of course, I mean, that's what regulation is for, and we have done a lot, implemented a lot within the past years, actually, to avoid what has happened in 2008 and 2009, the financial crisis. And when we talk to our Anglo-American friends, actually, the new US administration or the UK government, we actually promote that we should not have a race to the bottom now regulatory-wise, that we should keep our higher standards that we implemented after the crisis. Of course, you need to overlook and evaluate if you need to regulate something and if you can do it in a better way, but we should not do and should not have a race to the bottom.
Do you get the impression that the new French government, along with whatever German government we end up with, sees deepening the European Union, sees fixing, maybe that's not the right terminology, but addressing some of the shortfalls of the Eurozone as a priority? And do you think that Paris and Berlin see eye to eye on this?
Of course. I mean, with the elections now in France, the French people have chosen reason and hope instead of nationalism and protectionism. And now we want to build up something on it. We need to solve problems within the Eurozone and the European Union when it comes to migration, by the way, to secure our border, to talk about the defense union. Look what happens with Russia, Ukraine, and Middle East. We should be able to do something as a European Union and not always need to wait for the US. And of course, to bring back more growth and prosperity to Europe, and especially to big member states like France or Italy. That is crucial for Germany as well. And if we can find common projects, for example, to make investments more likely and to bring back growth, we will always be in for that.
But when you get out on the doorstep, when you knock on doors, North Rhine-Westphalia, the elections have only just happened, and I'm sure you played a big part in that. When you open the door and start talking about what is happening in terms of the euro, in terms of the fact that the ECB has interest rates still on the floor, yet inflation in Germany somewhere up here, and Germany has no output gap anymore, what kind of a response do the German people give you?
Well, of course there is concern about these low interest rates while the inflation is going up. I mean, interest rates of 0% and inflation of 0% you can explain somehow to the people, but if there should be a longer period of higher inflation and still 0% interest rates, and then there is really a concern, and you can feel that talking to people. And so what actually we need, and my minister already said that, is a prudent start actually to exit this low interest rate policy. And as far as I see it, that's discussed in the financial world anyway. The ECB is an independent institution and will choose its decisions wisely. I don't need to advise, and I don't want to advise on that. But I think step by step, with the growth coming back, that's the important part. Growth is coming back step by step, Europe-wide, and that might give a chance actually to have a prudent exit.
Just to kind of just wrap up that conversation, do you get a sense when you talk to the German, to the people on the doorstep, that is becoming a louder concern, that's becoming a bigger concern, and has that changed, would you say, in the last 12 months?
Of course it's becoming a bigger concern because people, savers, realize it's doing something with their savings if there is no interest rates but inflation. And of course people start to ask. That's not just an academic debate, that's a very concrete situation of voters. And so we need to address it. It's something we are asked about. And as I said, the ECB is an independent institution. I always tell that to my electorate as well. But we need to debate the results, actually, of this low interest rate policy anyway.